Again, I'm a little nervous, a little bit older, so let's go. Proverbs chapter 22. In Proverbs 1:7, which y'all covered a long time ago, there's a part of that verse, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And I think when I study Proverbs, which is kind of how I'm going to have to do this, when I study Proverbs, I look at this as, number one, we know our author of Solomon. And what is the first thing about Solomon that we usually think about? Wisdom. That's right. He wanted wisdom. That was pleasing to God, that he wanted wisdom and that he didn't want the riches of the world, and he got all those things because of that wisdom. And wisdom is something that there's a lot of different ways of collecting that. The ones in this classroom, including myself, have gained wisdom from age and from experiences and from what we've remembered and what we've had over our lives. The class I typically teach, their wisdom is not as founded as obviously those in this room are. So wisdom kind of changes and it morphs. Can you have bad wisdom? I think so. If you're not learning from a mistake that you made, the wisdom came from learning from that mistake. Oh, I ain't going to do that again. That's where I was going, Clyde. Who is the source of that wisdom? And what we need to remember is Solomon may have physically wrote these, but these aren't the words of Solomon. These are the words of God. And Proverbs, when we go to the New Testament, we have the Lord, the red letters. We have the Lord and his word teaching us how we're supposed to be good Christians and how to become a Christian and how to conduct ourselves in that spiritual part of it. In Proverbs, I look at it like this, because obviously the New Testament had not happened, but it's day-to-day snippets of coach speak. As some of these guys in here, some more than others, have heard a lot in their life of coach speak. My wife hates that. We'll be watching a sports program. They'll interview the coach, and they're pretty much all the same. Well, they played really good today. They did the best they could. Yak. Coach speak, okay? Most coach speak is positive. Most coach speak that you'll hear a coach, I'll use the word edifying, probably not the right word in that sense, but coach speak is what we do to pick Josh up. Did you have a good day, Josh, today? I had a good day today. I did this, and they're feel good, and they're moments in time. Solomon's given us snippets through God, snippets of these very things to help us through our day. And guess what? We can pick and choose which one pertains to that particular situation that we're going through. So if you're having a bad day because of, a proud and haughty, we'll go back over to 21, proud and haughty man, scoffer be his name. If we're having an issue with that, we can go to that. But how do we know how to go to that? How do we know where that's at? Pardon? But if we don't study that Bible and look at that Bible, we're not going to remember, oh, that's been addressed. I need a little bit of coach speak. And Solomon kind of is like a coach in that respect to that. They give us that little bit of pat on the backs, whatever you want to call it, smack on the helmet, whatever it is, to say, okay, that's that. But if we don't study that, we're not going to know that. We're not going to know where it's at. And a lot of times, have you been out into a situation and something's came up and you said, oh, I know the Bible talks about that, but I cannot remember where that's at. I do that all the time because I can't remember I can't remember it anyway. The more we study, the more that we look, the more we study again, and then the more we study, the more we practice, the more we, then we're going to recollect some of those things, and we'll at least might be able to go to the book. Well, I know that's in Proverbs, or I know that's in Matthew, or I know that's in whatever the situation may be. So our coaching's only good as much as we're allowed to accept it. I think that we have to be coachable. And this has nothing to do with athletics. This has to do with our spiritual world. Was Pharaoh coachable? That's just one that comes off it's not in my notes. Would Pharaoh be considered coachable? Because what's the Bible say about his heart? It was hardened. His heart was hardened. So I'm not going to listen to that, even though he had seen these things. Well, we got to be very careful that we don't do that very same thing and let our hearts get hardened to coachable moments. Even when we're struggling with something, the coachable moments have to be recognized and implemented. If I keep looking at Josh, there's some ancient familiarity with between him and my son when they both played football. And by the way, how about them Buffaloes, huh? Harding. But anyway, and I go back to coach. That's one of the reasons that the coachable. But if you're being taught, and your heart is hardened, what did you learn? Probably nothing, because you're not going to do that. So as Christians, as we go through Proverbs or as we go through any of our studies, if we're not taking those moments to open those doors and to be coachable, if we're just here to get through this, so that we can get into worship, and then hopefully we're not there in that frame of mind with that, then we're losing opportunities to not be coached the way God has intended us. That's what Bible study is. We're learning together. We're edifying. We're picking each other up. There was my coach speak, by the way. Okay, so if we go straight into verse 1, it's actually not more, I had more than that. We'll go to verse 1 in a minute. But if we keep going on to the coach speak mannerism, I go back to when you're reading in the New Testament when Jesus was doing his teachings, especially the Sermon on the Mount. What a great halftime show that would have been for the players, and the players would have been the Christians, that were going to be coming along, following that word, and it was the edification, and it was just strong messaging. The apostles, after that, when they got their marching orders to go out and to preach and teach, that's what it was. And it was not with, do you think some of those people hearts were hardened during the New Testament influx of the word being spread? Did everyone? Recipients. And it was a hard thing. Not all of them, Clyde said, it was on the recipient end of that, they were Jews. They knew the old law, or was supposed to know the old law and know the Messiah was coming. So if they were getting that session from the apostles, some of their hearts were hardened, and they weren't going to. And the Bible tells us few are going to do this. Few are going to follow the Lord. That's so true today. Few. Look in this room today, folks. Crossville's up to, 50, 60,000 people. I know we got different classes, but we'll have maybe 300 people here today. Few. Few. Well, doesn't give us an excuse not to try, but few are going to follow and be obedient to what God said. But Jesus was our best. He was our best shot in the arm And then the apostles had those marching orders to do that. And the Word and the Spirit is it's not an ugly thing. If you'll read the Bible, it's quite uplifting. There's some bad moments in it and some discipline moments in it and all that type stuff, but it's a good thing. It's a good feel if you'll feel it. So that is all of my coach speak on that. Any comments on that part of? Yes, Dennis. Mm-hmm. Right, right. Well, exactly. Negativity is a form of hardening your heart. If you're that person that is negative all of the time, some people sometimes have those days. You need to get over them and become more positive. Sure. Nobody wants to be around negative people, folks. They really don't. Carol? Because we already what, something?
Because we already know.
Yeah. Okay.
For example, the Jews, they thought they knew that it was going to be this great conquering hero, kind of like some of the great military leaders that they had.
Sure.
Thought they knew.
Yeah. It's basically the same thing. The Jews thought they knew everything. And we got to be careful with that. We got to be careful with that. That comes with our studying. But if you ever I'll go back to Dennis's comment there. Have you ever thought about this? When it comes to spiritual things, everybody wants things to be a feel-good story. Oh, we've got all of this going on to entertain people, whatever this may be. I'm talking about, in the spiritual world, there's a lot of religious people that work and spend tremendous amount of money and efforts and entertainment to make people feel good so that they'll show up. Okay? Not necessarily wrong, but okay. But if you turn on the news, absolutely everything is negative. Okay? So, where does this... So everything on the news is negative. If you get a feel-good story, it's because they had to work at trying to dig one up because nobody wants to hear that in that setting. In the religious world, we want to feel good about it. Is the word that's not the right word I want to use. Is obedience a feel-good story? Pardon? Over time it is, so not all of the time. It's not good for someone to say, you do realize that you're not being obedient to what God said, not what Jerry said, not what to your teacher said, not what to the Church of Christ said, not to what to blah, blah, blah said, but are you obedient to what God said? Yeah. It is a teaching benefit. Our positivity and our willingness to not be negative is a teaching thing. All right, Proverbs 22, verse 1. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold. Some proverbs are very plain and simple. Plain and simple. What most of us grew up with in here, I'm gonna rah-rah on that stand and say I'm with you guys, but what most of us grew up learning from our parents was our good name. Don't you be a buffoon and make the family look bad because you're being stupid. Maybe not so in those words, but basically like that. You know, you'll get disciplined for that. and our teenagers, we might not actually listen to that until we get disciplined a couple of times. And we are the buffoons that we are. Okay, so some proverbs are very simple. We've got to keep our name good. But what does it mean in our service to God to have a good name? What does that mean? Is it the same? If somebody sees, I hate pointing people out, so I really don't want to do that, but if somebody sees a member of the church, Sunday night, Wednesday, prayer meetings, gospel meetings, VBS, working, and then he sees him in the newspaper, and mistakes happen. Is that a proverbial lesson for us? Maybe they had a problem and fell. If it's habitual, is that a problem to the good name of what? The family of God. We are Christians. Okay? What is the first part of that word? Christ. We're to be Christ-like. Can we be perfect? No. Can we be trying? Yes. Must we be trying? Yes. When we bring bad things upon our name, we're hurting the church. We are hurting the church. It's very hard to edify somebody if you don't have that, if you don't have that good name. Yeah.
I think God said it just exactly right in verse 6. This ain't chat right where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's the very same thing. Just remember, and that's a good comment. Barbara? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And you're going to don't think your light, regardless of how bright it's shining, is not going to get put up there and shown. Because the world's going to say, oh, these old Church of Christ people, they think they're the only ones going to heaven, and look at that guy. Oh, that's persecution in a form. So we've got to worry about our good name, not only our good name in the family world, in the world, you know, oh, that's Josh White. They're good people. His mom and dad, and he's a good guy and all that stuff. Oh, that's wonderful stuff. That's wonderful stuff. But our good name spiritually is Christ. And that's the name that we're wearing. So if we're wearing it, we better be, you know, I mean, I see Clyde's daughters over here, and if y'all did something, and probably even his grandson, if y'all did something growing up that brought bad name to the Randolphs, you're probably going to hear it from your mom and daddy. I mean, that's just the way I knew I would. Didn't change me a whole lot at that point, but you know, as we get older, we hopefully are able to get better in that. Any other comments on that at all? Please. And that's very good, by the way. You all speak more than 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Yeah, a lot of times. In verse 2, the rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. Again, Proverbs is very plain. In a lot of ways, it's very plain. But do we have and do we see, this is probably a rhetorical question, but do we see different social statuses in our world? Of course we do. Always have. It's always been there. All right? But God makes us all. Is there anything wrong with, I don't even really know what that social status typically is affluent type things, whether they be in the political world, where they have some power, or whether they have monetary or material things. They put themselves above, typically put themselves into they put themselves in different, or the world puts them in different categories. And well, I can't hang around him. We think of the Good Samaritan. Just think of those things. We think of all of those things. We see these things everywhere. We see them from, unfortunately, through the homeless population that's expanding. It's very difficult when you have to move someone along for security reasons from around the building, because I'm sure that in the state that person is in, they're not thinking very godly of you as you tell them you got to move along. I've got women and children here. I can't have you sleeping under the stairs. That's not a social status thing. This happened, so I can say it was me. So it's not I'm not better than you. You just can't stay there. It's a security issue. You can't stay there. You got to move along. Okay? But that person's not going to see it like that, more than likely. They're going to see it as, well, you going in there where it's nice and warm, and probably could have handled that different, Josh. And who's doing that? Who's the author of that? And who's allowing, or who's physically doing that to your mind? That's Satan. Oh, we'll just drive that wedge. All he's got to do is drive that wedge. But you're exactly right. The more affluent people become, a lot of times, when there's nothing wrong with that, it's when they separate and can't talk to lesser affluent. I don't know what that, because there's really not in the church there is, folks, there is no social status. There needs to be no social status. We are Christians. Jesus ate with the publicans and sinners for that reason. He also ate with his apostles and disciples. We're all the same. It doesn't matter. We are all the same. Political differences, leave them at the door. Well, no, don't leave them at the door. Just don't bring them in. Just don't bring them in. Because I don't want to run down this rabbit hole real quick, but we don't want to disregard the decisions that we make that God has told us to help make in the government. We have to make as Christian decisions as we can in everything. But we don't need to bring them in here and require, because if I was I don't know, whatever. If I was one thing and Josh was one thing, and we knew that and we were adamant about that, what would that possibly do between me and him spiritually? Pardon? It's a wedge. So why have that? Don't care. I don't care what you are in that part of your beliefs. I don't care. What are we doing about church? What are we doing about the work? That's where that matters. And I'm preaching to my choir here. I'm sometimes very hard to get along, not in that respect, I don't think, but with other things. So we have to be, social status has zero. It didn't with Jesus. It don't with us. It shouldn't with us. We're to be Christ-like. Not God, people. Yeah, it's a continual work. That's going to be a work that you're just going to have to continue on with what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah, yes, I can. Elon. Yeah. Got to check it. Got to check it outside. But sometimes on that note, sometimes the lesser hardens their heart to maybe something that's perceived and not even accurate. Oh, Jerry wore a nice vest this morning. I guess he's all uppity. Well, it's not much of a vest, but he's not uppity. But could people have those type? Can people have those type of thoughts? Can that crutch be on them, or can that hurdle be on them? Yeah. So we've got to be, even especially within the church anyway, we've got to make sure we're approachable and make sure that which is difficult, because I've been here many, many years and I still don't know all the members' names, nor could I probably remember them if I did know them. So that's just an apology on that. Sometimes our mind doesn't work like that as quick as it should, but there's some, and that's the worst thing you can do. Hey, brother, how long you been visiting? Well, I've been here 5 years. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, sir, Mr. Curley. That's a perfect point, Marvin. Perfect. I use that in my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade class, because I'll have some in there that are Christians, and I'll say, guys, if you go to the lunch table at cafeteria time, I'm assuming they still do that, okay, and your friends, and you sit down, and if you're, of course, this is a big deal for me, who my kids hang around, grandkids, whatever. But if you're sitting there with a group of kids and nasty talk starts, bad jokes, and all that nonsense, all right, and you don't get up and leave, or you don't try to stop it, what are you then? You're a partaker of it. You're just like them, even if you're probably not. But you can't tolerate it any. That's persecution, because when you're going to get up, maybe that's the cool table, I don't know. When you get up and leave that cool table, you've just left your little cool table, your cool friends. But let's take that to our life. Same difference. It's the same thing. When we go to cafeteria or we go to lunch or whatever, if we hang around those people and we indulge in those things and we don't try to correct those things and we don't stand up for the truth, what are we? Partakers. We're just like it. We haven't done anything for it. So we have to, God has made us all. And we can be many things. Solomon was very rich. Abraham. We have many, 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 many stories of rich people in the Bible that were not bad. Okay? But the Bible specifically talks about what being rich and being careful about it can do to you. So it's really no different. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're reading today. Lewis. That's exactly right. Does it rain on the just and the unjust? Yeah. Do things happen? Do bad things happen to good people? Absolutely. That has nothing to do with, but we can't separate ourselves if those things don't happen to us and say, oh, look at me. We got to be very careful about those things. And that's all Satan just trying to drive little wedges. He doesn't need much. Even at our age, at our advanced age, folks, he doesn't need much. Oh, you can go worship. I don't care about that. You can go worship. I can keep you from heaven by doing this over here that you're not even going to be thinking about. Yeah, you can go worship all you want to, but I can keep you out of heaven by putting lustful thoughts in your mind or making dirty words come out of your mouth or having you be mean to somebody or whatever. You know, whatever. Satan knows all those little tricks, Verse 3. And my eyes sometimes takes a minute to adjust back. A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. A prudent man foresees evil and eludes himself. My wife over the holidays, one of her things is to make this fudge, and it's extremely good. Okay, it's extremely good. Okay, and I only let her make it on holidays, and luckily only 2 holidays, or I'd be extremely good. So the point of that is, I use that as a temptation. If we hang around the fudge shop, we're probably going to eat fudge. If we hang around the, whatever vice you want to throw in there, guess what? That little wedge is a lot easier. You're going to smell like a hog, even if you didn't do it. What's the old saying? If you play around with fire, you're probably going to get burnt. It's true. Do you always do people always fall into that trap? Is that 100% you're going to get burnt if you play around the fire? Not all the time. How many times does it take? 1. It takes 1 time to get burnt. You may play around the fire for a week and not get burnt, but you may play around it that 1 extra time and get burnt. So the punishment is there. So Satan's not going to just, we'll, and don't think he ain't out there. I'm not being that guy, but that's a biblical thing. He's out there and he's trying. And we have to be on alert for that. And these little coaching snippets hopefully can help us. Well, we don't know who's looking. We don't know who's looking out there. Steve.
You may not get burned, but you burn.
You smell like it. You smell like it. That's right. That's a good point. That's actually a very good point. If you didn't get up from that cafeteria table and you didn't engage in the conversation, what does this group over here still see? That's old Jerry over here. He's hanging with them foul-mouthed people. So he must be foul-mouthed, even though he may not be. But he hung around with them, so he must be just like them. So we hang around the fire and smell like smoke, and somebody didn't see us, and Josh comes up there and says, oh, Jerry, you smell like smoke. You must have been in the fire. Well, it's that analogy. Gossip, which I don't understand. I understand gossip. I don't understand the difficulty that Christians have with that. I really don't. Because it's very simple. If it doesn't concern you, you ought to just keep your mouth shut or move on. Get up from the cafeteria table and move on. Nothing good can come from that. If it doesn't concern you, number one, if it ain't got nothing to do with you, why would you waste time even fiddling with it? There's nothing to that. Well, it's the truth, so it's not gossip. Can the truth be gossip? Absolutely. Matter of fact, that's probably the one that hurts the most, I guess. So, I don't know, whatever. It's not easy to do, and it's not It's not a woman-man thing, folks. It ain't a kid-adult thing. It's a thing. And you got to get up from the cafeteria table when it starts. You ain't got nothing to do with that, and you move on. And guess what? If you do that a few times, you're not going to care. I don't care about whatever that particular thing. And that's a very difficult. And is busybodying and gossiping the same thing? Pardon? First cousins. There you go. First cousins. Pretty much the same thing. Pretty much the same thing. So just stay out of everybody else's business. Mind your own business. Get up from the cafeteria table when it starts, or hang up the phone and move on to your day. That is pretty simple. Harder to do than we think. And we all probably have parts of that to do. Is it smart to have a plan, exit strategy? There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Is it smart to have an exit strategy for things? I know when I got out of business for years, Clyde probably the same way, or anybody that's been in business, there's going to come a point in time when you're not going to do that anymore. And if you're in a privately owned company or something like that, exit strategies are very important. How am I going to exit where I don't affect many people and all of those things? We've all probably been touched by that in one way, shape, or another. But is it in our thoughts, is an exit strategy for sin something we probably should be devising? How am I going to get out of that if I know I go over there and this is going to happen? I know that's what's going to start. All right, perfect. Holidays. All the family. Does families always get along? Do they rarely get? I mean, odds are there's going to be a confrontation of some sort, whether it's big or little, when everybody gets together. If you know that and you know what is going to prompt that, shouldn't you have an exit? Well, I know when they start that, I am going outside, or I'm going to go back to the fudge plate, or whatever. So have your exit strategy for sin. All right, this is where I'm weak. If you know you're weak on language or gossiping or whatever is one of your hurdles, if you know that and you have a hard time with that, go to the Word, implement an exit strategy, get it into your mind, so when that happens, you go straight to your exit strategy and you move on. And you can do that. You can do that where you don't hurt other people's, I won't say their feelings, but you can do that where it's not so obvious. Does that make comments? All right. Verse 4. By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor of life. By humility and fear of the Lord. It's almost time. In the world we live in, don't we love to see the superstars fall? Have bad times. Not really, but isn't that what they sell? Oh, I don't know who these people are, but whatever. Pick one of these people. Oh, they're not having a good year. Well, that's because of this, and that's because of that. No, they're getting their comeuppance, and all of those type things. Okay? So it happened. What is humility? Briefly, what is humility? I heard something. It was a mouse. No, we don't have mice. What is humility? What would be a one-word catch-all for humility? I don't know. I'm waiting for something. So it's seeing that and saying, I'm not as cool as I think I am. I don't know, that's not probably the right word, but I'm not as, and it's easy to get into those traps. I'm not as funny as I thought I was. I'm not as talented as I thought I was. Okay, and we need to have that in our processing, in our spiritual world. Oh, I need work. I've got I've got to do this. Because when you do, I look at Russell sitting over there, and I love to hear him singing, and others too, but I love his song leading. And I always try to encourage people, and everybody else does too. Hey, good job today, good job today. Well, if enough people say that, sorry, Russell, it's just the way I'm pointing at you. You just caught me. Yeah, so you got me. So, and I've got a bell coming. But if enough people tell you that, pretty soon you think you are. And guess what? You are, but we ain't. All right, it is time. I'm sorry we only got through 4 verses. Thank you for your comments and for your patience.